This week on The Futurists, Pablos Holman.
I mean, I've worked for multiple billionaires, the richest people on earth. They don't have enough money to save the world.
Welcome back to The Futurists. I'm Katie King, and joining me from Thailand is my co-host, Brett King. Hey, Brett.
Yeah. Hey. No, it's a long way between the States and Thailand, but yeah, I'm here. No problem. Ready to go.
Hey, well, did you know that there is a laser device that actually blasts malaria-carrying mosquitoes out of the sky?
Laser sentry mosquito robot killers. That's just what we need.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it today. This week,
Awesome.
we have a really great guest. Yes, hacker, inventor, and technology futurist, Pablos Holman. Pablos, welcome to The Futurists. It's great to
Hi,
have you on the
guys.
show.
Hey.
Hey.
And
Some fun.
where are you, Pablos?
I'm in Brooklyn today,
You're in Brooklyn. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
but I
For some reason,
try
I
to
thought
live
you
in
were
a
Europe,
superposition and be everywhere at
Okay.
once.
Yeah, I hear you. Fair enough.
True. I know we met back maybe 10 years ago
Yeah.
in New York. It seems like forever ago. And yeah, it's good to see what you've been up to. So you're with Deep Tech, Deep Future. What is
Yeah, I
Deep
run
Tech?
a venture firm called Deep Future.
Okay.
Yes. So what is Deep Tech about?
Deep tech is, I think, the way that we distinguish all the actual technologies from what I call shallow tech, which is just software and iPhone apps and SaaS holes.
Okay.
Nice.
So you're
Cool.
talking about tech that is meaningful, tech that actually makes a
Meaningful,
difference,
and
or?
I think part of the definition of technology should be new. It's the application of like new science and new knowledge and new understanding, and I don't think software as we know it is that new. And so,
Yeah.
these things, wheels aren't new, steam engines aren't new, transistors aren't new. So, deep tech is, if you come up with a better version of those things or a way to replace them with something that does the job better. And I think it's important to recognize that we think we have this big tech industry, but we mostly just have a big software industry. And
Yeah, no, it's. I think that's true.
yeah,
The old Mark Andreessen quote, "Software's eating the world." I just watched Jensen Huang's keynote from the NVIDIA event the other week. The computing layers that they're talking about now, the advances they're making in AI-based, chipsets and stuff. It's pretty incredible. Even sort of the way we think about programming language. He was saying now humans are the programming language, right? So, pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
I mean, software is eating the world, but the world can't eat software. So we have to use other kinds of technologies to go solve problems like how do you feed people? When you look at what NVIDIA is doing, I think there's a lot of advanced technologies there, and they're technologies we could have gotten started on a long time ago, but we sort of got drunk on Moore's law, and we just got used to computers getting faster all the time by making transistors smaller. And so we stopped trying to innovate in other ways of making computers better and faster. And so what's kind of cool now is that we've sort of maxed out on Moore's law, the way we traditionally were able to, make computers faster on a schedule. And so everybody's having to scramble and find other things they can do to make them better. And there's all kinds of cool stuff, and that's a lot of what NVIDIA is showing is the fruits of that.
Right. So what are you working on now at Deep Future?
Yeah. So what we do is try to find all the inventors, who are the mad scientists and the crazy hackers who've come up with some new technology that we didn't have before that might be able to help us go attack some of the big problems in the world. And there's so much potential in that that's really untapped by the tech industry. So if you think about the big wins that we've had, the tech industry is very proud of having disrupted the taxi industry, but the taxi industry isn't exactly the most, meaningful or relevant industry in the world. We have, what about
Healthcare would
disrupting
be a good one.
healthcare? Sure. Or even food, General Mills. What
food
about General
availability.
Electric or General Motors or Saudi Aramco? These are the trillion-dollar industries, and they're left largely untouched by technology because you won't disrupt them with just software alone.
Yeah.
And we keep trying. And if you look at, in healthcare, that one's a quagmire, but there's a lot of attempts to go improve it with software. And yeah, you could make some things better, but where the rubber meets the road is probably not going to just be software.
Yeah.
So what are the three most top projects that you worked on that you think are just, the most awesome and you want to share with the whole world?
You can talk about, yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I've worked on a lot of crazy, projects in my career because I mostly just do the new stuff. These days we have startups that are doing all kinds of cool stuff. One of them is making cargo ships that are autonomous and they're sailing. So they don't need a crew. There's no fuel and there's no emissions.
Nice.
And, that one, I like it because it's pretty easy to believe that it's going to work. It's easier than self-driving Teslas.
Yeah.
And the sailing part we've had working for centuries now.
True.
So why do we have this massive industry built around just burning nasty bunker oil to get Happy Meal toys delivered from, China to Port of Los Angeles? Doesn't really have to be that way. And this is an industry that's probably twice the emissions of air travel, and we could fix it. We know how to do it. For a lot of these things, now we know what to do. We just haven't done it. So, so we'll do it. So that's one. I think that there's just nothing not to like about it. We have a company working on putting. So if you have solar panels, they basically have two big problems: clouds and nighttime. But if you take the solar panels and you put them in space, they get sun 24/7, 365 days a year.
Right, microwave energy. Yeah.
And then you beam it down to Earth using radio waves. Yeah. And people don't know this is possible. It's not only possible, it's like very practical to do. We know how to do it. The only reason that it doesn't make sense is launch cost. The cost of putting something into orbit. And that launch cost has ironically crashed recently and continues to come down. And so, we'll be at a point very soon here where in the next few years where doing solar in space will become irresistibly cost effective. And you don't need storage, you don't need transmission lines. You could beam it to each city anywhere on Earth. And that's
and we can test it on the moon, on the Artemis missions, maybe.
Could. I don't know if we need to, but sure.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that project that Bill Nye the Science Guy was promoting some years ago, Light Sail. Is it something similar like that?
I think Light Sail is a attempt to go the other way.
Concept.
You beam energy to a small craft, like literally this big, that you're going to send deep into the into the solar system. You aim a laser at this thing that's flying out in space forever, and it just uses the energy from the photons hitting it to make it keep going. So it doesn't have to haul any fuel with it, which is the problem we have with rockets and the kinds of propulsion we use now. So yeah, that's it. That's kind of beaming energy the other way.
No, it'd be like a satellite with a big solar array and massive battery storage, and it would just
no batteries.
Well, no, just use capacitors, and then just a big dish to beam the energy down, right, and some sort of positioning capability.
Yeah, that's more or less true. The sun comes in, radio waves come out. You do beam forming and beam steering to aim it at an antenna on the ground, and it just sends power, and it works in the middle of the night during a snowstorm.
No, I know. I remember when we had, Mez
Okay.
on Ramez. Now I'm sure you know
Yeah.
of him.
Yeah.
Mez on. He's talking about what is it? Is that 1 hour of sun every day is enough to power the planet for a year, or something incredible like that in
Well,
terms of
there's
statistics. But
there's
we just
enough
don't
energy
capture the
coming
energy.
out of the sun, but we
Yes.
only have the ability to capture the stuff aimed at Earth,
Yeah,
which is a
exactly.
very small fraction of it.
Yeah.
Um,
And even then, we only capture a very small percentage of that, right? So, yeah.
yeah.
No, that's
Exactly.
but that's pretty cool tech, So you get to
Yeah.
work on some pretty interesting stuff. How do
Yeah. I
you
only do interesting stuff.
how do you select projects? I mean, what's your methodology there, and how are you sourcing deals?
Yeah. So, I mean, the best things, you can't find them. Um, they're in a basement or a garage. The only people who know anything about it are a couple of nerds, and so, I'm lucky in the sense that a lot of them come to me, and that's largely just because I've done a lot of the kinds of projects they want to do, and I think that, you know hopefully people are convinced that I can be helpful. So that's how I find deals because they find me. So that's a lot of it. And then I think um, the framework is, you know, can this move the needle on a big problem in the world? Right? Do we get a new force multiplier that can help us solve that problem at a global scale? I only want to take on things that affect everyone on Earth. That's energy, water, waste, food, sanitation, construction, even apparel. There's things that every human on Earth relies on, and that to me is where the big wins are, and where the opportunity is, and where the important stuff to solve is. And so I'm real fixated on those problems, and I've been um, trying to understand them better over time, understand them in a way that keeps me from going after these red herrings or these things that aren't going to solve the problem. I think that's kind of where I start. And then I have this incredible superpower called arithmetic, which is I just do a little bit of math and try to add up, would this help us solve the global problem? Is this something that's going to put a dent in the scale of the problem? Or is this just another one of these things where we're, rearranging furniture on the deck of the Titanic? And
So this is, I mean,
that's how I do it.
this is really interesting from a venture capital perspective, because one of the problems you have with VCs, generally speaking, is they're fairly short term in respect to their expectation of returns, right? And the multiples and so forth, right? But some of these projects you're talking about are 10, 20-year projects before they become really commercially viable in the sense that we would talk about today. Although there are, other imperatives like, the health and well-being of the planet and the survivability of the human race, obviously.
Years ago, I helped get Blue Origin started. So I was probably like the first, I don't know, maybe probably the third or fourth person there. And that was in 2001. And that's people think that this is just a dalliance for billionaires, go flinging their big swinging rockets around the universe. That's not what it's about. Blue Origin, the vision there is, how do you, kind of make a plan B for humans? The vision is trillions of humans thriving in space, which sounds insane. But, in the best case scenario, Earth will melt into the sun. So this is not a permanent situation we have going under any circumstances. And so what I learned from that was that, you have to be able to have some people who are thinking on longer time horizons, right? Most people, they just got to pay rent and get their kids into college or whatever. that it can't really devote too much attention to, generations yet to come. But, Blue Origin I think of it as kind of a philanthropy. Jeff Bezos probably doesn't need to worry about paying rent. Well, maybe he does, I don't know. But he's able, in a way, to think about, what would it be like to start a project that could take thousands of years?
Right.
Because even that would start with one small step.
Well, humanity used to be a lot more focused on these sort of longer term, things. Just look at, some of the cathedrals that were built in Europe over hundreds of years, the Great Wall of China, et cetera. We have been prepared previously to commit to, very long term projects as a species, but capitalism sort of put paid to a lot of that in more recent centuries. Or would you argue that there's a comeback of that?
We have multiple kinds of machinery in the world. So capitalism is one of them. So I'm a venture capitalist. What does that mean? It means that if it's, again, I don't think we have a lot of actual venture going on. There's no Shackleton in, making the next Zoom or Slack or whatever. But there might be, you could say, in making, solar arrays in space or something. What it means is I'm going to go get money from people who have a lot and need to invest it. I'm going to aim that money at something that I think can return more. That's the basic game. So if you're an investor of some type and you're managing,
so the sales pitch is these are world-changing technologies. You got to think on a longer term scale, but when you do, the returns are going to be massive.
Yeah, so you can't attract a lot of capital. I mean, I've worked for multiple billionaires, the richest people on earth. They don't have enough money to save the world, right? That's not how it works. You could give everybody some of it and you wouldn't be moving the needle. It doesn't matter. You have to use the capital. You have to attract enough money that you can invest in something that grows, right? And what does that mean? Well, if you produce energy, right? If you can bring energy from space to Earth in a clean, cheap way and distribute it to people, they have more. Everything on Earth is made of energy. Like, we are all made of stars. It's not just song lyrics. Like, we're made of, that one star that you can see from here during the day, right? That's the game. So that's not just your solar power, that's your wind, that's your coal, your gas, your uranium, all of it came from the sun, and not to mention photosynthesis. So look, that we're just energy powered. Like, that's just what we are. We are energy. And so we made a lot of humans, but we didn't exactly make enough energy to take care of them. So if you look at what does that look like, I mean, the average earthling gets about as much energy as one toaster running 24/7, right? That's all their heating, cooling, food, transport, jet fuel, whatever. Americans get about 8 or 9 bonus toasters, right? We literally get almost 10 times as much energy as the average earthling. And to get those averages, it means 3 billion people live on less than one toaster.
Right. And so this is the argument that various people like Bill Gates, for example, make, that yes, we could improve poverty and homelessness and sanitation and all of those things around the world, but we'd all likely have to, because of the energy demands, we'd all likely as a species have to accept a slightly lower standard of living than we have today to make sure that everybody consistently around the world could have
it's not slightly
basic
lower
access to electricity, toilets, clean water, that sort of stuff.
It's not slightly lower. is
Right.
dramatically lower. And you
Okay.
can see it because billions of people live with a dramatically lower living standard.
Yeah.
And what I think it means is that we have not correctly set the variable for energy demand, right? Energy demand is not a few percent higher than it was last year. Energy demand is 10x global energy production.
Yeah.
Right now.
Okay, Pablos, so what we like to do at this point, just before we take a quick break, is we like to get to know our subjects a little better. So this is what we like to call the lightning round. We've got a few questions to ask you just to get to know you a bit better. All right?
All right, let's do it.
Okay, this is the lightning round. What technology has most changed humanity?
Probably Snapchat.
Interesting. All right. Name a futurist, an entrepreneur, or someone that has influenced you in terms of your thinking, and why?
You know, I guess one of the ones I remember, in this probably for more 25 years or something, was Stuart Brand. And the reason is because he was good at framing the global scale of problems.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you haven't read, like, Whole Earth Discipline was a book, it's probably 10 or 15 years old, but it's so good at helping you understand the way the problems are distributed around this planet across humanity. I think that had an effect on me. Definitely over the years, I've gotten more and more focused on solving problems for the world, not just for kids in San Francisco who need to have weed delivered to their dorm room by a drone.
Although that is a very
super important,
pursuit.
but other people have that covered, and it's probably not going to require my help.
What vision of the future is most representative of the future that you hope for humanity?
My vision of the future, I don't know, it might be amalgamated. Probably there's, listeners who can tell us what science fiction novel covers this the best, but I think that I think of humanity in kind of going in like developmental stages, like a kid growing up. Being a toddler is different than being a teenager. And we're at this developmental stage where we managed to get past a lot of the superstition and things that held us back because we didn't understand how they work. There's a lot we don't understand still, but we have an incredible toolkit. So we're just cruising through that stuff really fast. We're learning.
And AI could blow the whole thing wide open if we can figure out how to figure out the truth from the noise, right?
Well, it's hard to make a short snippet here, but I think what we now call AI has a ways to go. But yeah, in the long run, what happens is we can build these computational models that help us make better decisions. And I'm really excited about that because I think one of the things humans really suck at is making good decisions, especially in groups. And so, and a lot of that is because we don't really have the time or attention or wisdom to understand what the results of our decisions will be. There's like one result we're hoping to get, but then there's like 100 others that come with it that we're not good at projecting or understanding. And what's cool about a computational model, if it's done well, is it can show you these are your possible futures and let you choose from that which one do you want to go for.
Right, a sort of choose your own adventure.
Well, if you think about, and like a Google map, Google map shows you a blue line to where you want to go, but it also shows you like, all right, well, if you hit traffic or something goes wrong, there's this gray line that gives you some other options, and you can pick the one that works the best for you. And that is not what we do now, by and large. It is what is getting increasingly possible. We can basically play SimCity for for planet Earth and start to choose from our possible futures which one we want to go for, instead of just aiming for some fantasy future that may not be achievable from here. And so that toolkit is advanced now, and we are rarely using it, but it's still people with PhDs who are wielding it. But over time it becomes accessible, and I think we're at this point now where computational modeling, advanced computational modeling, which is how I think of it instead of AI, which is sort of an overloaded term. But those computational models can be built for anything. And so you'll build it for a bagel shop or a coffee shop the same way you'll build it for, IBM or Microsoft, and you'll build it for, we used to do it for disease eradication. But, you could do this as a way of helping you make better decisions. And so you could imagine where the way that plays out is, next time, eventually when Congress is going to pass some 800-page bill that no one's read, you could just feed it to the computer and say, hey, what if we were just hypothetically going to pass this bill, what might happen? And it'll tell you, here's what the possible futures are if you pass that bill. And so then we can, have competing models or competing AIs that might say, well, I'm better at figuring out the future than you and all that. But we would be having a better conversation, a more informed conversation about the decisions we make. And I think that, to me, that's like the exciting thing that's going to start to happen. And really, I think that is a pretty near-term thing, meaning, in the next couple decades, we'll start to do that with 100%. We will do that with all of our businesses, right? You won't use Excel. You will use a massive computational model that is for what you're doing. And, governments might take a couple decades more after that. But, I think that is an inflection point that no one's talking about, but it really changes the future for the species. And
well, that's a good point to take a break on, Pablos. So let's take a quick break. Cool. You're listening to The Futurists. I'm hosting with Katie today, Katie King, and we'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. Provoke Media is proud to sponsor, produce, and support the Futurist podcast. Provoke.fm is a global podcast network and content creation company with the world's leading fintech podcast and radio show, Breaking Banks. And of course, its spin-off podcasts, Breaking Banks Europe, Breaking Banks Asia Pacific, and the FinTech 5. But we also produce the official Finovate podcast, Tech on Reg, Emerge Everywhere, the podcast of the Financial Health Network, and Next Gen Banker. For information about all our podcasts, go to provoke.fm or check out Breaking Banks, the world's #1 fintech podcast and radio show. Welcome back to The Futurists. Before the break, we had Pablos Holman on with Katie and I. We were talking about sort of planning cycles of humanity and some of the limitations that we've sort of developed in more recent years in respect to decision making and how that's sort of going to change. But Pablos, why don't we jump into some of the longer term changes that you see and some of the technologies that are, let's first of all say, what is the problem set that you define? What are the things that you think most urgently need to be addressed technologically speaking? And then, what are the technologies on the horizon that make it look really interesting?
Yeah, I think the way I think about it is, or at least an easy way to think about it is, if you just go back to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's that like pyramid everybody's seen. And if you look at it, the things on the bottom are the fundamentals. You need some food, you need shelter, you need, health, you need those things. And then at the top, you've got things like, friends and family and meeting in your work and Snapchat. And so what we're doing, I think, a lot of the time is we're just putting the cart before the horse. People are up at the top of that pyramid arguing about how we're going to solve these problems up here, but we're failing because we haven't solved the ones at the bottom. And a good example of that, just sticking with the conversation we've had, when you look at Maslow's hierarchy, any version of it, it doesn't even have energy on the diagram. It's like so fundamental. It's
Right.
like below the pyramid. But you know, when you look at what is going on with energy, we're not providing enough for most people in the world. And when you look at what does the world fight about? What are all those wars about? They're about access to energy, right? They're about control of energy because there's not enough for everybody. So if you solve
Well, you could
energy,
say climate change is about energy, right? Is we knew 50
it's
years
true,
ago
exactly
that
right. Yeah.
burning fossil fuels was not only killing 10 million people a year due to air pollution, but we knew the effects it was having on the climate.
That's exactly the point, right? If we had built nuclear reactors since the 80s, you never would have heard of climate change.
Yeah.
Right. But we got scared of this technology we didn't understand. We conflated nuclear reactors with nuclear bombs. We outlawed them into oblivion, basically. And we made the wrong choice. Humans made the wrong choice, and we're living with the consequences. And so now we're trying to run around and kind of clean up this mess, but we still don't have enough energy to clean up the mess. So if you look at things like carbon capture, there's no ideas for carbon capture that don't require energy, right? Where are you going to get that energy? Oh, we're going to burn coal to go capture the carbon. If you want to sequester carbon, just leave the coal in the ground. That is literally the cheapest carbon sequestration scheme you will ever find. But instead, we're burning the coal to go capture more carbon. It doesn't make sense. And there's a bunch of layers of indirection in the middle. But these are the kinds of problems that I see a lot. We're putting the cart before the horse. So that's why I say use Maslow's hierarchy. Start at the bottom. Say, okay, how are we going to, for everything on that list, how are we going to 10x our ability to do that? How do we provide energy? How do we provide food 10x? How do we raise the sanitation in the world, in all the places that don't have it the way we do? 10x better. How do we do those things so that we reduce the infectious disease? 10x that. You have to work from the bottom up, is how I think about it. And we just got a little ahead of ourselves. And being Americans and being comparatively rich, we're rich because of that energy. Right? We have access to energy. We get 9 or 10 times as much energy as most people on Earth. Right? That's why we're rich. It's not because we're so smart and special in other ways. It's because we got the best piece of land with the most access to energy, and we've been milking that. So look, I'm not complaining. I just think the job isn't done. Now we need to use that, use everything that's been invested in us. And it started with energy, but it ended with universities, and then beyond with, technologies and the things that we've been able to do here. But the job's not done. Now the job is, how do you solve a problem that you don't have, a problem at a global scale, right? That 1 billion people have.
So I mean,
that's
it would,
what I think about. Yeah.
It would appear that a lot of these problems, there are technical solutions, but when it comes to addressing energy concerns, for example, we really need some sort of consensus mechanism to get people on the right page. Otherwise, you're going to have these corporations exploiting these differences in policy and laws and so forth to continue the gravy train, right? We know that much about the markets and the way they work. So how do you get consensus on some of these big picture ideas so that you can really affect global change?
You're out of my jurisdiction. There's two kinds of problems in the world: the technical problems, and I work on those, and then the problems between people and groups of people making dumb decisions. That's
someone else does.
Not my department.
Right. So well, let's dive into the technology then. So what are the emerging technologies that you're really you find are really promising?
Yeah, I mean, I think I see my job being to add tools to the arsenal for future humans who will be better at making decisions than us. And so we don't have to just talk about energy. There's a lot. We have here's another example. I mean, it kind of maps to energy, but when you look at something like recycling, people are out there trying to recycle the cheapest crap on earth: plastic bottles and cardboard. We don't even recycle the most expensive stuff on earth, which is like gold and platinum and metals that are infinitely recyclable. So we have a company that invented a non-toxic chemical process that can separate those metals from electronics. Every year, $20 billion worth of gold goes into electronics and then ends up in a gold mine we call a landfill. And there's...
I've always said landfill mining is going to be a massive business one day.
It will be. That's exactly right. And it'll start with those metals because, now we know how to get them in a non-toxic way that scales. So, and I think you start there and work your way down. If you want to recycle plastic bottles, you need to know that you can do it without burning coal and gas to do it. And right now, we can't do that. We're burning nasty bunker oil to ship that crap all over the planet. And so I think it's another example of like, are we putting the cart before the horse? We've been recycling in the US for 40 or 50 years, and it's mostly not working, right? And so, again, I think a lot of, going back to your previous question, I was being flippant, but, that building consensus thing that comes from the stories that we tell ourselves. Humans are story-powered creatures, and we've been telling ourselves a lot of stories that we fantasize that sound good, but aren't really backed by the arithmetic. And that's why I, try to focus people on that. Say, look, just do a little bit of math, not hard math. Don't have to take calculus. Just do the math you can do on a napkin and figure out, all right, if I'm separating my plastic from my cans, from my bottles, from my trash and my compost and sticking it all out on different bins on the curb, and then a truck comes by and picks them all up and throws them all in the back of the same truck, and then it disappears, and I feel like I've done my part, but where does it go? And where and what is that truck running on? Is it burning gas to get your plastic to the recycling facility? Probably. Is it going to happen in your town, or is it going to go on a barge across the ocean to Vietnam where they're going to pretend to recycle it? No, it's a scam. So look, not to disparage anybody working on recycling. We should try, and we should try to come up with better ways of making these things work, but it could take a long time. And I think that you won't succeed. That's another one where, you won't succeed if you don't solve energy first. And so let's find a way to solve energy. And that's just, again, I just tie it all back so that people can see how the thought process is fundamental. Energy is not the only problem, it's just the most fundamental one. And so you start from there, and you could go up Maslow's hierarchy from there,
Right. I remember one of your talks that I watched, you were talking about nuclear waste and how we could use that to power people for quite some time. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I worked at a lab called Intellectual Ventures Lab, and we had invented this nuclear reactor called the TerraPower reactor, and it's powered by nuclear waste. And we invented that machine in probably 2007, and we still don't have a reactor, right? It's not because we don't know how to build it. It's the most modern reactor ever designed. It was designed with giant supercomputers. We could do that computational modeling I described to help us figure out how to make a modern, safe reactor that can't melt down. It's powered by the uranium left over from making bombs when we have a lot of that. It's a more efficient reactor. And you don't need an enrichment plant to do it because it enriches its own fuel and then burns it.
Nice.
So it's this miraculous new reactor design, and we're not allowed to build it. Bill Gates is chairman of the company, and we haven't been able in 15 years to figure out how to get it approved by the US government to build it. And so, that's the situation we're in. And that's like I described before, that's a relic of having gotten the wrong story in our head. We outlawed these reactors. I don't know if you know this, I heard this recently, but JFK ran for president on a platform of building 1,000 nuclear reactors.
That's interesting.
That was his number one issue. Not his number one issue, it was the Democratic Party's number one issue. Build 1,000 nuclear reactors. That was what could have happened. That's the alternate future we are not living in because of poor human decision making.
Oh yeah.
So many different timelines. I mean, going back to what we spoke about earlier, is that it would be great to have some type of an AI that could help give people a vision of these different pathways, different timelines, so we could choose the highest timelines and be able to see it, what that alternate future could be like if we do choose that. It's
what I want is like SimCity with new technologies. Everybody can just be playing on their PlayStation, but we drop in nuclear reactors, we drop in space solar, we drop in fusion, we drop in, recycling gold, we drop in ships that sail themselves. We drop these things in and people can see which of these technologies that work, what the effect is. Do they want to believe in it? That's what we should make. That'd be cool.
That would be cool. I mean, hey, we got the metaverse, right? I mean, we should be able to get people involved in that space.
We've seen science fiction depictions of this type of modeling. From, of course,
sure.
What's the Spielberg movie with Tom Cruise in it?
It's called Schindler's List. That was awesome.
No, not shit.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. I just had a brain fart. It is.
I don't know what movie you're talking about.
The Minority Report.
Minority Report. Exactly. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I mean, look,
you've got that, which had.
But here's the thing. Let's pick this apart.
AI
problem.
Stuff,
right. These are. Look, this is actually a very important point. So, I mean, I know I'm not here to just antagonize everyone, but we celebrate Spielberg. We celebrate the storytellers. We celebrate Tom Cruise. We celebrate Hollywood for their genius ability to tell a story and move our hearts and minds, right? And what are they doing?
So much for their treatment of women.
They're being lazy and irresponsible,
yeah.
Right? They're not telling us a story about a positive, practical vision of the future, how the future could be awesome. No, every single time they take technology, they turn it into the boogeyman. They use it as a way to tell a scary, dystopian, horrible story that's a cautionary tale about how everything could go wrong. I'm sick and tired of it. I think we should boycott dystopia. We've had enough of that for several lifetimes. If you are truly creative, if you are a storyteller, if you are somebody who thinks that they have something to bring to the world, use it to tell us a story that's positive. Tell us a story about how things could go better than they are now. That's harder. That's what creativity's for. We don't need you to tell,
but AI could democratize 16. That.
Well, I don't know. I mean, look, there might be different ways to get there, but the point is, we are letting ourselves down by we've made storytelling into a kind of cookie cutter business. And we've gotten really good at that, but it's kept us from truly being creative and using our brains to tell a story about how things can go better. And you know what? The dystopians are always wrong, right? I mean, in the long run, humans end up. There's no time where we ever invent a technology.
Know, maybe the dystopian climate change people like Kim Stanley Robinson and others were, even. Carl Sagan, we talked about this stuff. Some of the stuff they said back a few decades ago is pretty prescient now. But
on a scale of decades, you can do that. But on a scale of centuries, you can't.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So if you look at what's happened, right, every time humans invent a technology and then develop it and prove that it works and is cost effective and is good, what happens is we assassinate those people because it's new, right? Like whoever invented the wheel was probably like, check this out. And everybody's like, fuck those wheel guys, and kill them off for a couple of generations. And then the kids are like, fuck you, dad, wheels are cool.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, it changes the world, and that's what is happening right now with nuclear reactors. You know, we grew up with Chernobyl. My kid doesn't know what Chernobyl is. She's going to be like
thorium reactors, tokamak. We got fusion reactors coming along. You know, there's a lot of changes there. I want to ask you. I want to take you back to one of the areas you spoke of earlier. You talked about this vision of humanity expanding through, you know, the solar system and then the galaxy and so forth, you know, with these incredible technologies. Trillions of humans, you said. But the reality is right now that we are, contrary to the projections in the 1970s and earlier, you know, we're actually going to peak out at what, 10.8 billion people or something like that. And the danger is now that most modern economies are shrinking in terms of their population. China is shrinking now. You know, so what gets us back to a point where humanity is growing like that and that wants to expand rather than just sort of retreating back to, you know, a minimum viable population?
I don't. I mean, look, I'll make some stuff up here, but you know, I try to focus on what's, you know, on the next few decades. I don't try to figure out how things might play out over thousands.
This is something that Elon Musk has talked about, though, as an example, right? His concern.
Yeah,
about
look. I mean, look. Population. I mean, we understand some of these dynamics, but they do change. Right now, we're at this point where, you know, the dominant force has been we made a lot. We got good at making humans. We made a lot of them. The most efficient way to farm humans is in cities, right? So humans had to urbanize. So we started moving people to cities so that we could basically afford to raise them. When you're in a city, you get better economic opportunity, you get better educational opportunity, but your lifestyle becomes more expensive, and your kids flip from being an asset to being a liability. They're no longer helping on the farm. They're not work. They're not labor. We don't actually need them. We actually made more people than we need. And so it's a reversion to the mean, you know, and I think that there's plenty of ways that could change in the future. It's not that, you know, I mean, certain classes of people find a great deal of fulfillment in raising kids, even though they're not using them as labor, right? So, you know, people could want to do that, but if
my kids generally
in a modern American city and you raise a kid, I mean, you know, you could have a Lamborghini or you could have a kid, and you know, that's a very expensive choice to make. So I think that is a side effect.
That's another one of those mistakes we're making, right? You know,
is it a mistake?
Things over.
I mean, we don't necessarily need more people. What we need is the people we have to thrive. That's what I think. Right. We already made these people. We should take responsibility for taking care of them and providing for them. And if we do a good job of that, you could imagine a future where more people could thrive. I didn't say trillions of humans surviving in space. I said trillions of humans thriving in space. That means we've provided for them.
Right.
And if you do a good job of providing for those people, then it wouldn't be so costly to make more. And so, you know, I think there's a, you know, there's a number of factors here. And I don't think we know we know what the future for humans probably is over the next 50 years, but we don't know what it's like for over the next 1,000 years. Because in 50 years, we will solve energy, right? And we will solve, and by solving energy, we will solve for a lot of the other basic needs on the bottom half of Maslow's hierarchy.
Yep.
Well, I don't know but you might cure inadvertent death.
Right.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, it's not clear to me that people should live forever, but yeah, the things that kill you are mostly technical problems that can be
like malaria.
Well, malaria is a great example. We solved malaria in the US, right? And we solved
Yeah.
it by spraying chemicals that kill everything.
Unless you
So
live
you
in
and I, or
Florida,
at least
apparently,
those of us who are in
because
America right now.
mosquitoes are making a comeback there. So malaria's hit
The
Florida.
mosquitoes are there, and they're carrying other diseases too. But the the problem is we didn't finish the job, and we didn't finish the job because we didn't have a technology that scaled to solve it at a global scale, right? We can't just spray DDT to kill everything in Africa. It's too big. And so we have to invent new ways of going after that disease. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's 1 million lives a year still being lost to malaria. Americans don't worry about it. A lot of things Americans don't worry about. That's why we're busy worrying about, whether our Twitter accounts have blue check marks and important shit. The rest of the world doesn't worry about that. They're just trying to not die of malaria. So look, I think there's it is a beautiful future. We will eradicate malaria.
So you are
You
are optimistic.
Well, look, here's what I think. I feel maybe I should have had lunch before we did this recording. I feel pretty antagonistic here. I'm not just angry. I'm not at all. What I believe in is that it is absolutely possible for the future to be better. For almost every problem in the world, we know how to solve it. That was not true 100 years ago. For almost every technical problem, we understand it well enough. We have the technology that could solve it. Most of it could be cost effective. We just aren't busy doing it. So I believe it is all possible. I think I'm a possibilist, not an optimist. Optimist sounds too Pollyannish. Yeah, we might fuck up for another 50 years the way we did with nuclear reactors. That's probably what's going to happen in some jurisdictions with AI. People are now trying to outlaw something they don't understand, right? And they're probably going to make some very poor decisions. They're going to have very negative consequences. I mean, look at psychedelics. That's another one. We outlawed it before we understood it. It's turned out to be the only thing we know of that can help people with these traumatic experiences that really screwed them up. Not just war vets, but increasingly all kinds of other people with traumatic experiences. And we have this almost miraculous technology that can help them with these psychedelic drugs. But we outlawed it at a time when we didn't understand it. We vilified anybody who even tried to research it. And we did the wrong thing. We threw generations under the bus by doing that. It was the wrong choice. And we need to be honest about that and recognize that we suck at regulating things we don't understand. And we need to stop doing that and learn about them and figure out what's good and where that's just part of the natural progression of adopting a new technology. You have to learn about it. You have to have experience with it. You have to understand it, and you have to figure out how much is too much and how much is too little, how much turns us into alcoholics and how much just makes us a little better at hanging out with other assholes. You have to build up an immunity sometimes, and like we're at social media, we're still in junior high with that, where we're all, just screwing around being dickheads. But over time, we will learn how much is too much, how much is too little, how much makes my life better, and how much makes it worse. And, that's just a developmental phase that we're at, and we have to go through that sometimes. Anyway, look, I'm preaching, but hopefully
we need more preaching, dude.
Out of that.
We need more preaching, brother.
Other people can advocate for all the dystopian. I'm here to tell you, like, we can make it awesome.
So let's make it awesome. Pablos, where can we find out more about you, what you do, and how can we support you?
Well, you can support me by finding anybody with crazy hair and a DeLorean and just send them my way. I like to try to be helpful, especially if these are, force multipliers on the big problems like we talked about. See if we can get these things off the ground. I want to do a lot of them. There's a bunch of TED Talks online, different things people can watch to get more preaching from me if that's what you think you need in your life. And then, I have a podcast also called Deep Future, which is, mostly me just hanging out, picking the brains of the smartest people I can find And if you're interested in coming along for that conversation, you can do that. And after the first of the year, that there should be a lot more episodes of that coming out. So yeah.
Great.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for coming on The Futurists. It's been a great time chatting with you, and here's to creating a more techno-optimist future, one that we could actually leverage technology and innovation and
you guys,
make shit
it's
happen.
so exciting. There's the future will be awesome, and there's so much that we're able to do better now, and we just got to get off our butts and do it after the next season of Netflix. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
It was nice to meet you. Nice to get to know you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad it worked out.
No problem. Well, that's it for the Futurist this week. Thanks, Katie, for stepping up and pulling this episode together. And Pablos, thanks for joining us. If you liked what you heard, make sure you tweet it out, Snapchat it, or Zeet it out. What is it now? You can't tweet it out. It's zeeting.
You got to yeet it out.
Yeet it out. Yeet it out across the room. Post it somewhere. Give us a 5-star rating. Leave some comments. All of those things help people find it. And podcast is going gangbusters, so your support means a lot there. Thanks for listening today, but we will be back next week with more on The Futurist. Until then, we'll see you
in the future.
Well, that's it for The Futurists this week. If you like the show, we sure hope you did. Please subscribe and share it with the people in your community. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. That really helps other people find the show. And you can ping us anytime on Instagram and Twitter at Futurist Podcast for the folks that you'd like to see on the show or the questions that you'd like us to ask. Thanks for joining. And as always, we'll see you in the future.